Hi, my name's Anne Parkinson and I'm in Unity Physiotherapy and Wellbeing. In this video we will look at the three circles model and explore it a little in the context of pain, fatigue and anxiety. Before we begin, I would like to mention that during this video there will be a few suggestions for exploration, and they are exactly that. They are choices, invitations to engage with if you wish, if it feels okay to you. And any of the suggestions can be adapted in any way. If it feels needed for you, please reach out to a suitably trained therapist for guidance. Do what feels right for you. To begin, let's start by looking at what the three circles model is. The three circles model, or the three emotional systems model, was developed by Professor Paul Gilbert as part of compassion-focused therapy, which is also known as compassionate mind training when it's used outside of the context of therapy. As the name suggests, there are three emotional systems in this model, which are represented by three different coloured circles, which you can see on screen here. Although we don't have three emotional systems in the brain as such, or three parts of emotional regulation, research suggests there are at least three parts of the brain involved. And it's a helpful model to help us understand our emotions and emotional regulation, and things like nervous system and nervous system regulation and the chemical messengers associated with this. So we'll go through each of the systems in turn. Before we do, let's explore this image on screen here a little. I developed this as a quick reference guide, as a summary in case it was helpful. I adapted it from Professor Paul Gilbert's infographic in his book The Compassionate Mind. I've added the main chemical messengers involved and the parts of the nervous system, except for the drive system. I haven't added the nervous system to that because it's a little bit more complicated, because it's a mix and it depends on how we're in the drive system, so whether it's more of a threat-based drive or a soothing-based drive. And hopefully that will become more clear as we move through this video. So as you can see, we've got the red circle, which is the threat system, the blue circle, which is the drive system, and the green circle, which is the soothing system. And perhaps as you can see, each system has a focus, has an action, so whether it's activating, soothing or inhibiting, has associated feelings and emotions. And there are more than are on this image. I've used mainly the ones that Paul has on his infographic in his book, and we'll talk about some of the others as we go through the video. And then, as mentioned, there are associated chemical messengers and parts of the nervous system that are most active, which Paul talks about in his book rather than having it within the infographic. I think it's important to mention that no one system is inherently bad. We need a balance of all of them, and that balance is changing all the time, and when we're aware of what triggers each system for us, we can consciously bring the three systems back into balance, or more towards balance. I think it's a really helpful model to help us understand how our feelings, emotions, thoughts and behaviours are all interlinked and impacting each other. And I think by exploring the different circles, it helps us to build awareness, regulate, have more choices and possibilities. And I think it helps us in managing and changing things like pain, fatigue and anxiety too. I've used it myself for that, and I use it a lot in clinic. So let's explore each of the systems. So we have the threat system circle, the red circle. This is designed to watch out for threats, as the name suggests. It's part of our survival, protection mechanisms, and motivates us to avoid harm and loss and to seek safety. The threat system takes a better safe than sorry approach. Our human brains have a negativity bias. The responses it triggers are associated with the sympathetic nervous system, the fight, flight and freeze responses. It's associated with feelings of anger, anxiety, pain, fear, self-criticism, shame, anything associated with protection states. anything associated with the sympathetic nervous system. It is also associated with the chemical messengers associated with the fight-flight system, the sympathetic nervous system, so things like cortisol and adrenaline. The threat system can be triggered in many ways, including by fear-based thoughts like worry and self-criticism, unhelpful beliefs like feeling not good enough or that we don't belong, which are both common when living with such as persistent pain and anxiety. Worries often include fear of pain getting worse from doing a particular activity, or fear or worry around a particular movement, or even movement in general. It is also triggered by smells and sounds. One example would be a burning smell from toast under the grill. That smell of smoke and the smoke alarm beeping triggering our threat system. It's also triggered by things like stepping into the road when there's an oncoming car approaching that hadn't been seen. So it's triggered by actual threats and potential threats. It's very good at alerting us to many things that may or may not harm us. Remember, it takes a better safe than sorry approach. So moving on to the drive system. The drive system circle is the blue circle. It motivates us to seek and obtain resources, including food and shelter, some of our basic needs, and to achieve our goals. It is a pleasure-based system. It is associated with energy and motivation. It gives us a sense of reward, excitement and vitality, and is associated with dopamine, which is a reward-based chemical messenger, a feel-good chemical. It can be activated again in many ways and includes things like doing hobbies, work, attending events with family and friends. The drive system can shrink or become overactive. The latter, when it's overactive, is a threat-based drive, which we'll look at a little later. Some examples of when it may shrink are when people are struggling with something like persistent pain and have lost a sense of what's meaningful to them and what's possible, or perhaps when work is difficult due to pain or fatigue and hours have had to be reduced in order to manage. Both of these examples are threat-based drive. Even though the circle has shrunk, it's being activated from a place of threat. When the drive system shrinks, it can be struggled to be accessed. And that is particularly the case when there's depression, and it can become really small. And it also becomes small when there's low mood. So the drive system can be nurtured. It needs to be nurtured from the soothing system. So it's more of a soothing drive, which we'll cover a little later. It's important to mention that in everyday society and everyday life these days, the threat and drive system get overstimulated for any of us, whether living with things like persistent pain or not. So that's that threat-based drive. And it's important for us all to work with the soothing system, and perhaps even more important when we live with things like pain, fatigue and anxiety, as the threat system is being even more stimulated. It's being triggered too often and or too much. And we can use that soothing system to bring more balance back. So let's move on to looking at the soothing system. The soothing system circle, the green circle, is also a pleasure-based system. It is associated with the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest-digest response, and feeling safe, content and connected, and there is a sense of our mind and body slowing down. It is also associated with things like feeling grounded, at ease, peaceful, feeling okay in our own skin. It is associated with connecting with others. We are a social species and co-regulate each other. The soothing system is deeply connected to this. The soothing system helps us to manage stress and is associated with chemical messengers that help to calm the nervous system and body, for example oxytocin and some of our endorphins that help to modulate the threat system. These chemical messengers have other actions as well, including that they can help modulate pain. The soothing system is commonly really small with pain, fatigue and anxiety, and there are many reasons why this happens, including the impact of society in general, not being able to do what's meaningful, feeling disconnected from a sense of purpose, not knowing what's possible anymore, feeling maybe not heard or understood, feeling not good enough, and there being a lot of worry or fear around making the pain worse. A lot, if not all, of these examples I've mentioned would be associated with a small drive circle and using more of a threat-based drive too. The soothing system is activated by anything that can help our mind and bodies slow down, where we feel connected to our body and feel grounded and settled. This can include things like yoga, having a bath, reading, being in nature, meditation and mindfulness practices, breath practices, grounding techniques, listening to music, being around pets and those we love, having a hug. Any of these can become a threat as well. For example, when living with pain, fatigue and anxiety, it may be that heat increases fatigue. So perhaps having a bath was once soothing and it's now a threat. Maybe with anxiety there's now sensitivity to certain sounds. So going to a place that was once enjoyed is now associated with the threat system. Maybe walking was soothing before and it's now associated with pain and threat and doesn't feel possible. And maybe someone is living with fibromyalgia and their body is sensitive to touch and a hug becomes more of a threat. We'll look at ways we can start to move things back to soothing when they've moved to threat a little later. So let's move on to talking about the threat-based drive, which we touched on a little earlier. Threat drive is where we are more in our drive system from our threat system, and we've lost that modulation or break of the soothing system, and all three systems are out of balance. It's what you can see on the left hand side of the image as you look at it here. So there's a small soothing system circle, a bigger threat system circle and a bigger drive system circle. And we'll come to looking at the part of the image on the right hand side of the screen in a little while. So threat drive is really common for all of us, and perhaps more so in living with pain, fatigue or anxiety. And there are a number of reasons why it is common, including that our tricky human brains are wired for negativity bias and protection, and also because, as mentioned a little earlier, society really stimulates the threat-based drive by encouraging always doing, always being busy, striving, wanting more, achieving more, and so on. And there are numbers of consequences of a threat-based drive, including self-criticism, feeling not good enough, comparing ourselves to others and making judgments all the time and keep doing more because perhaps we don't feel like we're good enough. We can lose connection to our values and what's purposeful and meaningful. We can have sleep issues, chronic stress, we can feel tired and wired, and many more things. We need that modulation of the soothing system. Indicators of a threat-based drive, including feeling that you should do something, you must do something, you have to do something, are being driven by self-criticism, worry, anxiety, frustration. And it can include things like worry or anxiety about a pain flare with doing something and feeling that you have to do it and you push yourself to do it, but it's come from that threat-based place. Or feeling like you aren't doing enough and people don't understand as they think you look okay, so you keep overdoing things and the pain keeps flaring. Or perhaps you're tired and wired with anxiety or fatigue. So let's look at this whole image now. So an example could be where somebody perhaps is having less pain one day and they feel really motivated to do the things that they need and want to do, that perhaps they enjoy doing, and they jump out of the threat into the drive. That's the part on the left side of the screen. So they do all these things that they need and want to do, and they overdo, and they go way past what the tolerance levels are. And this takes them crashing back into the threat system, and the drive system shrinks again. And that is on the right hand side of the screen. And this crash back into threat could be associated with many things, including a pain flare, self-criticism, guilt, lack of sleep, and a smaller drive could be associated perhaps with lack of motivation and perhaps tiredness or lethargy. And then after a day, a few days, a week, their motivation increases, perhaps because there's less pain, and they jump back in that drive. The same thing happens and they're back in the threat, and that's why there's those two arrows between those two parts of the image, and it's what's often referred to as a boom bust pattern in pain. And it's something that I refer to in terms of this model as a flick-flack effect or a butterfly effect, because people are jumping out of threat into drive, crashing back in threat, out of threat into drive, crashing back in threat, and we need that modulation of the soothing system. So using the soothing system can help us to modulate threat. We need to be able to connect to it to help us bring it into the drive and help us modulate that threat. So we're aiming for a soothing drive, which can be helpful. And to have more of a soothing drive, we need to be able to access our soothing system. We need to nurture our soothing system, which we'll come on to a little bit later. Nurturing or nourishing our soothing system is important for us all, and perhaps especially when living with things like pain, fatigue or anxiety. Nurturing our soothing system is helpful in many ways, including that it helps to modulate the threat system. It acts like a brake on the threat system. Modulating the threat system matters in many ways, including that it helps to decrease things like self-criticism, worry, rumination, anxiety, frustration and anger. It can help to modulate things like pain and fatigue. Being in our threat system too often or too much or both is tiring. When we're in our threat system too much, we tend not to be sleeping well. We tend not to see all the available choices, and we don't have clarity of thought, and we struggle with focus and many other things. So modulating the threat system is helpful. Remember that our threat system is really easily stimulated. It takes a better safe than sorry approach. It's activated by things that may or may not harm us. Our human brains have a negativity bias. We're wired for protection. And society really overstimulates our threat system, so it's important that we can modulate it. Nurturing our soothing system also helps us activate more of a soothing-based drive. It does this by modulating the threat system, and also being in the soothing system helps us access things like what's meaningful to us, our values, our sense of purpose, and also things like a sense of safety, feeling connected, settled, grounded, perhaps at ease. And there's also things like clarity of thought here. And we can take the soothing system to the drive system. For example, taking action that's values aligned and feeling safe enough, settled enough to do this. Nurturing our soothing system also helps us keep balance in all the systems. There's a helpful saying in compassion-focused therapy or compassionate mind training, which is growing the green, or grow the green. Growing the green could be a helpful saying to remember. It's about that focus on the nurture or the growth of the green circle, the soothing system. And we can only grow the green when we know what is in our soothing system, when we know what activates it and stimulates it for us, what's soothing for us, along with an awareness of how we are. So on the screen here there are two different size green circles, two different size soothing system circles, and two-way arrows. And that's because the size is always changing. As with the other systems throughout the day, the level of activity within them is fluctuating. And it's important we're aware of how we are within these three systems, and we're aware when we need to bring in more soothing and what is soothing for us. So if, for example, we're aware that our threat system's getting more stimulated, that we are moving out of our window of tolerance, perhaps we have more pain, we're tired, or we're beginning to feel unsettled, anxious, or we can't focus very well, we need to bring in more soothing. When we're aware of that and we're aware of what's in that soothing system for us, we can take the helpful action. So it's important to remember that the balance is changing in all the systems all day, and be aware of how we are, and then take intentional action to make helpful changes, which is often bringing in more soothing. The drive system also needs nurturing, which we'll touch on a little later. So there's a helpful practice to do, which you can engage in now if you wish, which is looking at the balance of the three circles for you as they are right now, and looking at what's in each circle, and then considering how you can grow the green. And I'll share a few tips for increasing the soothing system. So if you'd like to engage with this exercise, I invite you to draw the three circles, the size they are relative to each other right now, for life in general. If this doesn't feel okay to you, you can do it for a particular context like a hobby or work. Usually the place to start is with life in general. If that's not okay, you can modify it as I've just mentioned or in another way. So draw the three circles, the size they are relative to each other right now. And then once you've done that, see if you can simply notice the balance between these three systems. See if you can do so in a compassionate way without judgment. Know that however they are is okay. Often they're not in balance for any of us. Remember that balance is changing all the time. See if that gives you any awareness, seeing the balance of these three systems. Then I invite you to explore what's in each system. So you can choose whichever one you want to start with. And it may be that between the systems you find it's helpful to move or take a few mindful breaths or look around the room, and especially after doing the threat system circle. It might be interesting to notice how you feel in your body when you're connected to each system and you're noticing what's in each system. You may well find that the threat system is the easiest one to write the list for and the longest list, and that's common and normal. Remember, our threat system is really easily stimulated. And if you're struggling with the soothing system, know that's normal and okay. People especially struggle with this when they're struggling with pain or fatigue or anxiety, or even if they're not and due to previous experiences with things. So if you're struggling with this, know that's okay. If there's only one thing in this circle for you, that's okay too. We can grow from that one thing. If you're really struggling with it and you can't connect to anything, it may be you need to reach out for support with it. So there may be one thing in the soothing system, there may be a few, or there may be more. Notice what the balance is like in the three systems, what's in each circle, and also perhaps notice if you tend to use more of a threat-based drive most often, or a soothing-based drive, or if there's no soothing-based drive. Notice how you're accessing that drive system as well if you can. And then let's look at some tips for increasing the soothing system circle. So there are many ways you can do this, and there are some common themes, I guess, which I will share some of. So one of the things that can be really helpful is considering the aspects of what is soothing for you. So if there's only one thing in the soothing system circle, you may wish to also consider what used to be soothing for you and what the common aspects of this were as well. So considering, for example, who's around you or what animals are around you if it's not people, or if you're on your own when things are feeling soothing for you. Also what you can hear and see and feel when you're in your soothing system. That would be some of the aspects of the soothing system. What also are some of the aspects of feeling grounded, settled, safe for you? Looking at the aspects of the things that are in the soothing system or used to be, or imagining what they might be. And then you can use these aspects, you can bring them into different things to increase the soothing system. You could also consider what brings more ease. Having an awareness, for example, before, during and after doing something can be helpful. So, for example, exploring what we're believing, what we're saying to ourselves, what our breath's like, what the tension's like in our body, if we're hesitating. All of these are examples of threat being stimulated, and we can modulate them to help bring in some more ease and some safety and more soothing. It's also important that we acknowledge how we are and validate how we are and connect to the common humanity within the suffering and the experiences. So if you can compassionately and non-judgmentally acknowledge that the pain, fatigue or anxiety is present without getting hooked into it. Acknowledging that it's tricky or difficult right now and that other people feel the same, that other people suffer in the same or similar ways, connecting to the common humanity in the suffering. And this helps connect to not being alone. And this may or may not be something that's soothing for you, and it may be something that can go in the soothing system circle. Commonly, when struggling with things like pain, fatigue or anxiety, trust decreases. Trust in the body and trust in ourselves. And that can make things not soothing. It can take away a sense of safety and ease and feeling settled. So exploring nurturing trust can be helpful, and there are many ways that this can be done, including exploring what it feels like to trust. So, for example, the things that you're doing automatically, you're trusting yourself to do. What does this feel like in your body, and how can you bring this into some of the things that are perhaps less easy? If things have moved from soothing to threat, so they used to be soothing but they've moved to threat due to pain, fatigue or anxiety, we can explore moving them back to safety, back to soothing. And there are many ways in which we can do this, including understanding what we're saying to ourselves and what we're believing, understanding what our baselines are for certain activities, so that we can feel that something's achievable and possible. Maybe we need to pace something differently and bring in more rests. You can bring in the compassionate self and compassionately reframe things. Maybe doing a breath practice before, after or during something helps decrease the threat and bring in some soothing. Maybe using compassionate self-touch helps move something back to soothing. So there are many ways in which we can move something from threat to soothing. You can consider the aspects that you explored that made something soothing and see if you can bring this to something that's moved to threat, so you can bring it back to soothing. And there are also common things that are soothing that we talked about a little earlier. And practices that can be helpful include self-compassion practices. They can be triggering for some people initially, and sometimes people need support with them depending on previous experiences. Practices like safe place imagery can be helpful as well. You can find some self-compassion practices in my book and in books like the Compassionate Mind Workbook by Dr. Chris Irons and Dr. Elaine Beaumont. And there's a safe place imagery practice freely available on my SoundCloud, and you'll find others on the internet as well. If breath practices are okay for you to do, there are certain breath practices that can stimulate the vagus nerve and connect to the soothing system, like soothing rhythm breathing from compassion focused therapy, coherence breathing, extended exhale. And you can find some breath practices in my book, and I offer a freely available recording of soothing rhythm breathing on my SoundCloud too. And again, there are other practices of soothing rhythm breathing available on the internet freely too. So there are many different ways of exploring increasing our soothing system, and we've touched on some of them here. So I hope it's helpful and it's something you can keep on exploring, and we'll look at the importance of nurturing both drive and soothing next. Growing the green, nurturing the soothing system is really important, as we've talked about, including because it modulates the threat system, helps us connect to a soothing based drive, and helps to keep balance in all systems. The drive system can also help calm down feelings of threat, but not if our threat system is really overactive and we're using a threat-based drive. Usually the place to start is with the soothing system, even if the drive system is low, as we need to be able to activate a soothing-based drive rather than a threat-based one. And remember, our drive system circle can also shrink, and we need to focus on nurturing it too. So both the soothing system and the drive system can help to modulate threat, and we don't need to usually focus on decreasing the threat system directly, as using the soothing system or the soothe-based drive do this, and it tends to be more helpful to focus on what we want, not what we don't want. Remember, our brain has a negativity bias too. Remember that the soothing system acts like a brake on threat. The soothing system and the soothing drive both help calm our nervous system, body and mind. So, although we haven't specifically looked at what can increase the drive system in this video, there are a few quick tips I could share. So you could consider what brings a sense of purpose, meaning and fun to things, what your values are, and how you can connect to these each day in some way. What's meaningful, your values and a sense of purpose connects to a soothing-based drive, unless of course there are things like worry, of pain increasing, or there's a lot of self-criticism, that you can't do the things now, or you're not able to pace the activities in a way that helps you be able to manage pain or fatigue. So if there's a lot of threat attached, then it would become that threat-based drive again, and you would need to work with the soothing system, like with reframing some of the thoughts or the beliefs, or using self-compassion to calm down the worry, for example, to make it more of a soothing-based drive and stimulate that soothing drive system. So hopefully this has been helpful. I think there would be some key things to remember, and hopefully you've got some key things down that are important to you. I think remembering the grow the green, nurture the soothing system, that the balance is changing all the time throughout the day is important to remember. Important to remember that we have a lot of things that stimulate our threat system, which is why focusing on growing the soothing system is important. That the soothing system helps to modulate threat. Both the soothing system and the soothe-based drive help calm our nervous system, body and mind. I hope it was helpful.